I'm here to help you fall asleep tonight. Before we begin, take a moment to tell me, where are you listening from? And what time is it there right now? Now, get cozy and let your shoulders drop. The rain begins as you step from your car, a gentle pattering that seems to welcome you to this forgotten place. The sound is soft and steady, like nature's own lullaby, falling on leaves that have grown wild and free for decades. You pull your jacket closer, not from cold, but from comfort, feeling the familiar weight of the fabric as droplets begin to trace lazy paths down the waterproof material. Before you stretches a narrow dirt path, barely visible beneath a carpet of emerald moss that seems to glow in the diffused light. The mist hangs low here, wrapping around ancient stone walls and creeping between buildings that time has gently reclaimed. Everything is soft-edged and dreamlike, as if you've stepped into a watercolor painting where the colors have bled together in the most beautiful way. Your feet find the path naturally, boots sinking slightly into the spongy moss with each step. The sensation is oddly satisfying, that gentle give beneath your weight, like walking on the earth's own cushion. The rain continues its quiet percussion overhead, filtering through leaves that have grown thick and wild, creating a canopy that turns the rainfall into 1,000 tiny whispers. The first building you encounter stands patient and serene, its stone walls now more green than gray. Moss has climbed every surface with infinite patience, creating a living tapestry that shifts from deep forest green to pale sage depending on how the mist moves and settles. You can see where windows once were, now gaping openings that frame nothing but the gentle dance of fog and rain. Vines have woven themselves through these spaces, creating natural curtains that sway with the slightest breeze. You pause here, letting your eyes adjust to the subtle variations in the mist. The rain has found its rhythm now, not heavy enough to hurry you along, but present enough to be a constant, soothing companion. Water drips from the eaves of buildings with a musical quality, each drop adding its voice to the symphony of this peaceful morning. The sound echoes slightly in the empty spaces, creating a sense of depth and history that feels comforting rather than haunting. Moving deeper into the village, you notice how the cobblestone street has become a mosaic of stone and moss. The original pattern is still visible in places, where rounded stones peek through their soft green covering like islands in a verdant sea. Your steps make almost no sound here. The moss absorbs everything, creating a hush that makes the rain seem even more pronounced by contrast. A weathered wooden sign catches your attention, though time and elements have long since erased whatever words it once displayed. The post leans at a gentle angle, wrapped in climbing vines that have turned it into a living sculpture. Tiny droplets cling to the leaves, each one a perfect sphere that catches what little light filters through the mist. You find yourself studying these miniature worlds, watching how they tremble slightly with each breath of wind before rolling off to join the earth below. The village square opens before you, a circular space where 5 narrow streets converge. In the center stands what might once have been a fountain, now transformed into something entirely different by decades of patient growth. Moss has claimed every surface, softening hard edges until the structure resembles a natural hill more than anything made by human hands. Water still runs here, though not by design. Rainwater pools and overflows in gentle cascades that have carved their own channels through the moss, creating tiny streams that wind between the stones. You settle onto what was probably once the fountain's edge, now a comfortable bench cushioned by thick, springy moss. The position gives you a perfect view of the village spreading out in all directions, each building unique in how nature has reclaimed it. Some stand tall and proud, their moss coats making them look like ancient guardians draped in ceremonial robes. Others have settled lower, as if kneeling in quiet meditation, Their roof lines softened until they seemed to be gently melting back into the earth. The rain continues its steady conversation with the leaves above. Occasionally, a larger drop finds its way through the canopy and lands on your hand or cheek. A cool, brief touch that feels like a gentle greeting. The air itself seems to shimmer with moisture, creating an atmosphere so thick and soft you feel you could almost touch it. Each breath brings the rich scent of wet earth, growing things, and that particular fragrance that exists only when rain meets stone that has stood for generations. From your seat, you can see into some of the buildings through their open doorways and windows. Interiors that once housed families and businesses now serve as greenhouses for wild growth. Ferns unfurl from corners where walls meet floors, their fronds creating delicate patterns against backgrounds of lichen-covered stone. Shafts of misty light angle through openings, highlighting floating particles that dance like tiny spirits in the gentle air currents. A small bird lands on a window ledge nearby, seemingly unbothered by the rain. Its feathers are dark with moisture, but it moves with unhurried purpose, tilting its head to look at you with bright, curious eyes. The encounter lasts only moments before it flutters away, but something about its presence adds to the sense that this place is not abandoned so much as transformed. Still alive, just serving a different purpose now. Rising from your moss-cushioned seat, you continue your exploration. Each street offers new discoveries, new ways that nature has interpreted the structures left behind. Here, a stone archway has become a frame for cascading vines that hang like a beaded curtain, droplets of rain clinging to every leaf and creating a gentle tinkling sound as they fall. There, a wooden door has weathered to silver gray, its surface textured by years of rain and wind until it resembles driftwood polished by decades of tides. The mist shifts and swirls as you walk, sometimes revealing details that were hidden moments before, other times drawing a soft veil over things you've already seen. It's like having a conversation with the village itself, as if it's deciding what to show you and when. The rain remains your constant companion throughout, never intrusive but always present, a gentle reminder that you're part of something larger and more patient than the hurried world you've left behind. One building draws your attention, perhaps because it seems the most complete, or perhaps because the way the mist clings to its walls creates particularly beautiful patterns. The entrance is an arched doorway, framed by stones that someone long ago carefully selected and fitted together. Now each stone is outlined in moss, creating a living mortar that seems even more durable than what came before. You step through, entering a space that feels like a natural cathedral. The roof has long since opened to the sky in places, allowing rain to enter in soft columns of silver light. Where the water lands, it has created small gardens, patches of moss so thick and lush they seem to glow with their own inner light. The walls rise around you, still solid and protective, but softened by growth until they feel more like extensions of the living earth than barriers against it. Standing in the center of this space, you close your eyes and simply listen. The rain has a different quality here, more intimate somehow. You can hear individual drops landing on different surfaces, the soft whisper of water meeting moss, the slightly sharper note of drops hitting stone, the gentle patter against leaves that have found their way inside. It creates a complex, ever-changing rhythm that seems designed to slow your breathing and quiet your thoughts. When you open your eyes, the mist has shifted again, and you notice details that weren't apparent before. A wooden beam overhead, weathered smooth and hung with delicate strands of some climbing plant. The way light filters through a gap in the wall, creating a soft golden glow that illuminates dancing particles of moisture. Small pools of rainwater that have formed in depressions in the floor, each one a perfect mirror reflecting bits of sky and stone and green growth. You could stay in this peaceful shelter indefinitely, but the gentle call of continued exploration eventually draws you back outside. The village has more stories to tell, more quiet wonders to reveal. The rain welcomes you back with its steady whisper, and you notice that your jacket has become beaded with tiny droplets, each one catching light like a scattered handful of diamonds. The next street slopes gently downward, and you can hear the sound of running water growing stronger with each step. Following the sound, you discover that a small stream has claimed one of the village's old streets for its own. The water runs clear and quick over stones that it has polished smooth, creating tiny rapids and pools that add their voices to the rain's ongoing song. The stream has no regard for the original intent of this space. It simply flows where the land tells it to go, weaving between buildings and under bridges that were never meant for water, but now serve that purpose with ancient grace. Walking alongside this impromptu waterway, you notice how it has become a highway for life in the village. Small plants cluster along its banks, their roots finding purchase between stones. Moss grows especially thick here, fed by the constant moisture, creating cushioned pathways that feel wonderful beneath your feet. The air is even richer with the scent of growing things, and you can hear the gentle gurgle and splash of water finding its way around obstacles, over small falls, through gaps between stones. A wooden bridge crosses the stream, or rather, what remains of a bridge. The original structure has weathered and settled until it's more suggestion than barrier, but moss has filled in the gaps and reinforced what time has weakened. Crossing here feels ceremonial, like stepping from one world into another, though both sides of the stream are equally peaceful, equally wrapped in the village's dreamy atmosphere. On the far side, you discover what might once have been a market square. The space is more open than the residential streets, allowing the mist to pool and swirl with more freedom. Stone stalls or walls, it's hard to tell which they once were, now serve as planters for wild gardens that have arranged themselves with an artist's eye for composition. The rain here seems to dance more freely too, creating patterns in the puddles that reflect the movement of clouds you can barely see through the mist above. You find another place to rest, a low stone wall that has been transformed by moss into a comfortable seat. From here, you can watch the rain create ever-changing patterns on the water-darkened stones, see how it collects in the cup-shaped leaves of plants you can't name. Observe the way it makes everything shine with a soft, muted luster. This sound is hypnotic, not just the falling rain, but all the secondary sounds it creates as it interacts with the village's transformed landscape. Time moves differently here. You might have been sitting for minutes or hours. There's no urgency to mark its passage, no schedule that demands attention. The rain continues its gentle conversation with the world around you, and you're content to listen, to breathe the rich, moisture-laden air, to watch the mist shift and reveal new tableaus of stones and moss and growing things. Eventually, your exploration draws you onward again. Each turn reveals new wonders, a narrow alley where vines have created a living roof, filtering the rain into an even gentler sprinkle. A courtyard where water has pooled to create a perfect reflecting pool, its surface dimpled by raindrops but clear enough to mirror the misty sky above. A stairway where each step has become a tiny garden, moss and small flowers creating a living carpet that makes climbing feel like ascending through clouds. The village seems to be arranged in terraces, each level offering a different perspective on the whole. As you climb higher, you begin to see how the mist moves through the streets below, following paths that make sense to fog but might have surprised the original inhabitants. From this vantage point, the village looks even more like something from a dream, buildings emerging from and disappearing into white vapor, their moss-covered walls seeming to breathe with the movement of the air around them. A particularly beautiful building catches your attention at this level. It's larger than the others, perhaps once a community gathering place or a prominent family's home. Now it serves as a showcase for how gracefully human structures can return to nature. The walls are completely covered in moss so thick and varied that it creates patterns like a living tapestry. Different species have claimed different areas, some growing in tight, velvety patches, others spreading in loose, flowing cascades that move gently in the breeze. The entrance to this building is framed by what might once have been an elaborate stone archway. Time and weather have softened its edges, but the basic structure remains, now outlined and cushioned with moss until it looks like it was carved from living earth rather than stone. Passing through feels like entering a sacred space, and indeed, the interior has a cathedral-like quality that takes your breath away. The roof here is mostly intact, though gaps allow shafts of misty light to penetrate the interior. These beams illuminate sections of the space in turn as the mist shifts outside, creating a constantly changing display of light and shadow. The floor is carpeted with moss so thick it muffles every footstep, and the walls rise around you in shades of green that range from deep forest to pale sage to silvery mint. What captures your attention most, though, is the sound. The rain on the roof above creates a complex symphony, sometimes sharp taps on harder surfaces, sometimes soft whispers on leaves that have found their way up there, always changing as wind moves branches and shifts the patterns of what the rain encounters. Combined with the gentle drips that find their way through gaps, and the echo of your own breathing in the sheltered space, it creates an acoustic environment that seems designed for meditation and peace. You settle into a corner where a fallen beam, now completely cushioned with moss, creates a natural bench. From here, you can watch the play of light and mist through the various openings, see how each shaft of illumination reveals different textures and details in the moss-covered walls. The air moves gently through the space, carrying scents of rain and growing things, never still but never hurried. Closing your eyes again, you focus on the layers of sound around you. The rain overhead, steady and reliable. The occasional drip finding its way to the moss-covered floor with the softest of impacts. Your own breathing, slower now, deeper, matching the peaceful rhythm of this place. Somewhere in the walls, you can hear the subtle movement of plants growing, expanding, claiming new territory in their patient, persistent way. When you open your eyes, you notice details that weren't apparent before. The way different mosses create different textures, some like velvet, others like tiny forests of miniature trees. How water has carved gentle channels in the moss where it regularly drips, creating pathways that guide rainwater in pleasing curves along the walls. The interplay of different shades of green as various plants have found their niches and grown according to their natures. A small pool has formed in a depression in the floor, fed by the regular drip from one particular gap in the roof above. The water is perfectly clear, and its surface creates a mirror that reflects the misty light filtering down. Occasionally, a drop lands in the center, sending gentle ripples outward that distort the reflection for a moment before it settles back into clarity. The sight is mesmerizing, this simple, natural cycle of water falling, pooling, reflecting, being disturbed, then finding peace again. You could watch this forever, but the village still has more to offer. Rising from your mossy seat, you make your way back outside, where the rain greets you like an old friend. The mist has thickened while you were inside, making the world even more dreamlike. Buildings that were clearly visible before now appear and disappear like gentle ghosts, their moss-covered walls seeming to merge with the fog until it's hard to tell where solid earth ends and vapor begins. The exploration continues down another street, this one so overgrown that it's more like walking through a tunnel of living green. Vines and branches have grown together overhead, creating a natural ceiling that turns the rain into an even gentler shower. The light here is dim and green-tinged, filtered through layers of leaves until everything takes on an underwater quality that makes movement feel slow and dreamlike. Small flowers have found their way into this green tunnel, tiny blooms in shades of white and pale yellow that seem to glow in the dim light. They're scattered throughout the moss and between the stones like stars in a green sky. each one perfect in its simplicity. The rain beads on their petals without weighing them down, creating tiny gardens of light wherever they cluster. This street opens eventually into another small square, this one completely claimed by a single massive tree. Its trunk must be ancient, too wide for your arms to encircle, bark deeply furrowed and dark with moisture. The canopy spreads over the entire space, creating a living roof that transforms the rain into a gentler shower that finds its way through in drops and drizzles rather than steady streams. Beneath this natural umbrella, the village has created one of its most beautiful transformations. The original paving stones are still visible, but between them, moss has grown in patterns that seem almost deliberate, creating pathways and borders that guide the eye in pleasing curves around the space. Where the tree's roots have pushed up through the old paving, they've been embraced by moss and small ferns that turn each disruption into a garden feature. You find a place to sit among these roots on a natural seat formed where one large root curves around another. The position gives you a perfect view of how the rain interacts with the tree's canopy above. You can see the drops forming on leaves, growing heavy, then falling in their own time to create secondary showers beneath the main canopy. Each leaf seems to have its own personality in how it handles the rain. Some letting drops roll off immediately, others holding them until they reach a perfect size before releasing them. The sound here is different again, more muffled, more intimate. The tree absorbs much of the rain's impact, creating a softer, more complex rhythm as water finds various paths through the branches to the moss-covered ground below. There's something deeply comforting about sitting in this natural shelter, protected but not isolated from the rain, able to experience its presence without its full intensity. As you sit, you become aware of the tree's immense presence. Not just its size, but its age, its patience, the way it has adapted to and embraced its role in this transformed village. Its roots extend far beyond what you can see, probably connecting with other plants throughout the area, sharing resources and information in ways that make the entire village something like a single, vast organism. The thought is soothing rather than overwhelming. The idea that you're sitting in the midst of this gentle, living network that has taken decades to establish itself. The mist continues to move and shift around the square, sometimes revealing glimpses of buildings beyond the tree's canopy, other times creating the illusion that this green sanctuary exists in isolation, surrounded by nothing but soft white vapor. Both perspectives are beautiful in their own way, the sense of being part of a larger whole, and the feeling of being in a private, protected space that exists outside of ordinary time and place. Eventually, the call of continued exploration draws you up from your comfortable seat among the roots. The tree seems to bid you farewell with a gentle shower of drops from its leaves, each one a cool blessing on your skin. Beyond the square, you discover more streets, more buildings, each with its own story of transformation and patient return to nature. One street surprises you with its width, perhaps once a main thoroughfare, now a green boulevard where moss has claimed the center and created what looks like a living carpet between rows of transformed buildings. The rain here has room to fall more freely, creating a gentle shower that you walk through as if moving through a benediction. Your footsteps on the moss are completely silent, adding to the dreamlike quality of the experience. The buildings along this street show some of the most dramatic transformations you've seen. Here, a structure that might once have been a shop or has been so completely claimed by climbing plants that its original form is more suggestion than reality. Vines have woven themselves into a living wall, punctuated by windows and doorways that frame views of the green interior where more plants have made their homes. The effect is of a building that has learned to breathe, its walls expanding and contracting gently with the movement of the plants that now define its shape. Another building has settled so gracefully into the landscape that it seems to be emerging from the earth rather than standing upon it. Moss covers every surface, but here it has grown with such thickness and variation that it creates the impression of rolling hills rather than architectural surfaces. Small streams of rainwater have carved gentle channels through this moss landscape, creating miniature valleys and watersheds that guide water in pleasing curves toward the street below. The rain continues its steady presence, never intrusive but always there, adding its voice to every sound and its touch to every surface. You realize that your clothes have gradually absorbed moisture until they feel soft and warm against your skin, not wet so much as embraced by the gentle humidity that surrounds everything here. Even the air feels substantial, thick with moisture and the rich sense of growing things. Turning down a narrower street, you discover what might once have been a residential area. Here, the buildings are smaller, more intimate, each one unique in how nature has claimed it. Some lean gently against their neighbors, as if seeking comfort and support. Others stand proud and independent, their moss coats making them look like ancient sentinels draped in ceremonial robes. The gardens that have grown between these buildings are particularly beautiful. Without human planning or maintenance, they've arranged themselves with an artist's eye for color and texture. Different mosses create patterns of varying greens, punctuated by the silver gray of weathered stone and the darker browns of earth and root. Small flowers add occasional splashes of color, whites and pale yellows mostly, but here and there a touch of lavender or soft pink where some hardy bloom has found its niche. You discover a small courtyard hidden between several buildings, accessible only through a narrow passage that's almost completely overgrown. Inside, you find one of the village's most magical transformations. What was probably once a private garden has become something far more wonderful, a natural sanctuary where water, stone, and plant life have achieved perfect harmony. A small spring bubbles up from the ground here, perhaps always present, or perhaps created by decades of rainwater finding its way through the earth to emerge in this protected space. The water forms a clear pool before overflowing in a gentle stream that winds between moss-covered stones on its way to join the larger waterway you encountered earlier. The sound of this spring adds a new note to the rain's ongoing symphony, not just water falling from above, but water rising from below, completing some ancient cycle. Around the spring, the moss has grown with particular lush abandon. Different species have claimed different areas based on their preferences for moisture and light, creating a living mosaic that changes subtly as your eye follows the water's path. Ferns have found homes in the shadier corners, their fronds creating delicate patterns against the moss-covered walls. Small flowering plants cluster near the water's edge, their blooms reflecting in the clear surface when the rain isn't actively dimpling it with fresh drops. You settle on a moss-covered stone beside the spring, close enough to hear its gentle bubbling, far enough to see the entire courtyard and appreciate how all its elements work together. The rain continues overhead, adding its drops to the spring's water, creating tiny ripples that catch and scatter what light filters through the mist. The air here is particularly rich with moisture and the scent of growing things, creating an atmosphere so thick and nurturing it feels like being embraced by the earth itself. From this position, you can observe the intricate ecosystem that has developed in this small space. Tiny insects move through the moss, part of food webs you can only imagine. Small birds occasionally visit, drinking from the spring's edge or hunting among the plants. Everything exists in balance, each element supporting the others in ways that speak of time and patience and the gentle persistence of life finding its way. The courtyard walls rise around you, their original stone construction now completely integrated with the living systems that have claimed them. Roots have found purchase in mortar joints, not destroying but somehow strengthening the structure by binding it together in new ways. Moss has smoothed rough edges and softened harsh lines until the walls feel more like natural formations than human constructions. Time continues to move at its own pace here. The rain maintains its steady presence. The spring adds its bubbling voice. And you find yourself simply being present in this perfect moment of peace and natural beauty. Your breathing has synchronized with the gentle rhythms around you, and thoughts that seemed important earlier have faded into comfortable irrelevance. When you eventually rise to continue your exploration, you do so reluctantly, knowing that this courtyard has become an anchor point in your memory, a place you'll return to in your mind when you need to remember what true peace feels like. The spring continues its ancient work as you leave, adding its water to the village's network of streams and pools, part of the larger story of how this place has transformed itself over the decades. The passage out of the courtyard leads to another street, and then another square, each offering new perspectives on the village's gentle transformation. Here, you find buildings that have settled into the landscape so completely they seem like natural hills until you notice the doorways and windows that mark their human origins. There, a structure has been claimed by a climbing plant so thoroughly that it has become more greenhouse than building, its interior visible through gaps in the living walls as a jungle of ferns and flowering vines. The rain continues to provide the soundtrack for your exploration, its voice changing subtly with each new environment. In open squares, it falls freely, creating complex rhythms as it hits different surfaces. In narrow alleys overgrown with vines, it becomes a gentler patter filtered through layers of leaves. Beside streams and pools, it adds its voice to the music of flowing water, creating harmonies that seem composed by some patient, invisible musician. You discover a street that slopes steeply upward, leading to what must have been the village's highest point. The climb is made easier by the thick moss that cushions every step, and by the fact that plants growing along the way have created natural handholds where their roots and branches offer support. The rain here seems to come from multiple directions as it bounces off the vegetation around you, creating a shower that feels more like being gently misted than rained upon. At the top of this climb, you find the village's crown jewel, a building that must once have been significant, perhaps a church or meeting hall, now transformed into something even more magnificent. The structure stands complete but utterly changed, its walls and roof so completely covered with moss and climbing plants that it looks like a building made entirely of living material. The original stone and wood are still there, providing structure and support, but they're completely hidden beneath layers of green growth that seem to breathe with the gentle movement of the air. The entrance to this building is an archway that nature has decorated with hanging vines, creating a living curtain that parts as you approach. Inside, you discover a space that takes your breath away. The original architecture is still visible in the basic shape and proportions, but every surface has been transformed by moss and lichen until the interior feels like being inside a living cave carved from emerald and sage. Light enters through gaps in the roof where stones have shifted or fallen, creating shafts of illumination that reveal the incredible detail of the moss-covered walls. Different species have claimed different areas, creating patterns and textures that change as you move through the space. Some areas are covered in moss so fine it looks like velvet. Others feature varieties that grow in tiny, tree-like formations, creating miniature forests on the vertical surfaces. The floor here is particularly wonderful, covered in moss so thick and soft it feels like walking on the finest carpet. Your footsteps make no sound at all, adding to the sense that you've entered a sacred space outside the normal rules of the physical world. The rain above creates a complex symphony as it hits different parts of the roof and finds various ways through the gaps, sometimes falling in single drops that land with the softest of impacts on the moss below. In what might once have been the altar area, water has created one of the most beautiful features you've seen. A natural basin has formed where rainwater collects, fed by several steady drips from the roof above. The water is perfectly clear, and its surface creates a mirror that reflects the misty light filtering down from above. Around this pool, the moss has grown with particular lushness, creating what looks like a natural shrine where water, stone, and plant life achieve perfect harmony. You settle nearby, on what might once have been a pew or bench, now transformed by moss into the most comfortable seat imaginable. From here, you can observe the entire space, appreciating how every element works together to create an atmosphere of profound peace. The rain continues its gentle percussion overhead. The drops fall with perfect timing into the clear pool, and the light shifts and changes as the mist moves outside, creating an ever-changing display of natural beauty. This feels like the heart of the village, the place where its transformation is most complete and most beautiful. Here, the boundary between human creation and natural reclamation has disappeared entirely. The building serves its original purpose, providing a space for gathering and reflection, but it does so in ways its builders never could have imagined. The moss-covered walls seem to breathe with life. The water basin provides a focal point for meditation, and the acoustic properties created by the soft surfaces turn every sound into something musical and soothing. You close your eyes and let yourself simply exist in this perfect environment. The rain provides a constant, gentle rhythm that seems to slow your heartbeat and deepen your breathing. The air is rich with moisture and the scent of growing things, so thick and nurturing it feels like being surrounded by life itself. The moss beneath you seems to support not just your physical weight but your entire being, creating a sense of being held and protected by the earth itself. When you open your eyes, the light is shifted again, revealing new details in the living walls around you. Here, a tiny flowering vine has found its way through the moss, adding small white blooms that seem to glow in the dim light. There, different species of moss have grown together, creating patterns that look almost deliberate, as if some invisible artist has been at work creating a masterpiece that spans decades. The pool continues to receive its steady drops from above, each one sending gentle ripples across the surface that distort and then restore the reflected image of the misty sky. The sight is hypnotic, a natural meditation that could hold your attention for hours. Each drop is perfectly timed, neither too fast nor too slow, creating a rhythm that seems designed to quiet the mind and ease the spirit into deep peace. Eventually, though, the time comes to begin your journey back through the village. Rising from your moss-cushioned seat feels like leaving a sacred space, and indeed, you pause at the vine-curtained entrance to look back at the peaceful interior one more time. The building continues its ancient work of transformation, each day bringing new growth, new beauty, new integration of human creation with natural reclamation. The rain greets you again outside, steady and welcoming as ever. The mist has thickened during your time in the moss-covered sanctuary, making the world even more dreamlike. Buildings appear and disappear in the white vapor like benevolent spirits, their moss-covered walls seeming to breathe with the movement of the air around them. Your descent through the village takes you past familiar landmarks now seen from new perspectives. The courtyard with its bubbling spring seems even more magical when viewed from above, a secret garden hidden in the heart of the transformed community. The great tree in its square looks like an ancient guardian, its canopy a living roof that shelters whatever passes beneath. The stream that has claimed one of the streets continues its work, carrying rainwater from higher ground toward whatever larger waterway waits beyond the village boundaries. Its voice has become part of the village's permanent soundtrack, mixing with the rain and the dripping and the gentle rustle of plants moving in the soft breeze. As you walk back through streets you've already explored, You notice details that escaped your attention before. The way certain buildings seem to lean toward each other like old friends sharing secrets. How the moss has grown in different patterns on walls that face different directions, creating subtle variations that speak of adaptation to light and weather and the preferences of different plant species. The rain continues its gentle blessing on everything, never hurrying you along, but always present as a companion and guide. Your jacket has long since absorbed as much moisture as it can hold, but rather than feeling wet, you feel embraced by the humidity that surrounds everything here. Even the air feels substantial, thick with life-giving moisture and the rich sense of earth and growing things. Returning to the village's outer edge, you find your car waiting exactly where you left it, though it now seems like an artifact from another world. Covered with a fine mist and surrounded by the wild growth that edges this transformed place, it looks patient and slightly out of place, like a modern sculpture someone has placed in a natural museum. But you're not quite ready to leave. The rain continues to fall, and the village continues its ancient work of transformation. There's something deeply satisfying about standing at this threshold between two worlds, the hurried, constructed world of highways and schedules, and this patient, organic world where time moves to different rhythms and change happens at the pace of growing moss and shifting seasons. You turn back for one last look at the village, though the mist has thickened until only the nearest buildings are clearly visible. The others fade away into white vapor, their moss-covered walls becoming one with the fog until it's impossible to tell where solid earth ends and sky begins. It's a perfect ending to your exploration, a reminder that this place exists in its own reality, following its own rules, maintaining its own pace regardless of the world that surrounds it. The rain continues to fall as you finally turn toward your car, each drop adding to the ancient work of transformation that has created this peaceful sanctuary. You carry with you the memory of moss-covered walls that breathe with life, of water that flows where it chooses regardless of human plans, of buildings that have learned to serve new purposes while maintaining their essential dignity and grace. As you drive away, the sound of rain on your car's roof becomes a final gift from the village, a reminder of the gentle rhythms that continue their work whether witnessed or not, the patient processes that transform all things given enough time and the right conditions. The village fades into mist behind you, but its peace travels with you, a renewable resource you can return to whenever the world moves too fast or feels too hard-edged. The rain follows you for miles, a gentle companion that connects you to the moss-covered sanctuary you've left behind. Each drop on your windshield carries with it the memory of how water and time and patient growth can transform anything into something beautiful, something peaceful, something that serves life in ways its creators never imagined but would surely approve of if they could see the gentle magic their work has become. And in your mind, the village continues its ancient transformation, rain falling on moss-covered walls, streams finding new paths through cobblestone streets, plants claiming territory and creating beauty with the infinite patience of growing things. It will be there when you return, changed but essentially the same, continuing its work of showing how human creation and natural reclamation can achieve perfect harmony when given enough time and the blessing of gentle rain. The sound of water falling on leaves, on stone, on moss, on the surface of clear pools continues in your memory long after the actual rain has stopped. It becomes a rhythm you can return to when you need peace, a soundtrack for those moments when the world requires the deep calm that comes from remembering how beautiful transformation can be when it happens slowly, patiently, with the gentle persistence of growing things and falling rain. But your exploration is far from over. As you sit in your car, engine still off, you realize the village has more secrets to share. The rain continues its gentle invitation, and the mist seems to beckon you back toward paths you haven't yet discovered. There's something magnetic about this place, something that makes leaving feel premature, like walking away from a conversation that's just beginning to reveal its deeper truths. You step back out into the rain, letting it welcome you once again with its familiar whisper. This time, you notice a narrow path leading away from the main cluster of buildings, barely visible through the mist, but marked by the same thick moss that carpets everything here. The path winds gently upward, following what might once have been a walking trail or perhaps just the natural contours of the land as water has shaped them over countless seasons. Following this moss-cushioned trail, you discover that the village extends further than you initially realized. Buildings become more scattered here, separated by larger gardens that have gone completely wild. Each structure you encounter seems to tell a different story of how nature reclaims human spaces when given time and the blessing of consistent moisture. One building catches your attention because of how completely it has been integrated into what appears to be a living hillside. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than a moss-covered mound. But as you approach, you can make out the subtle lines of walls and the dark rectangles of windows and doorways. The structure has settled so deeply into the earth and been so thoroughly claimed by plant life that it seems to have grown from the ground rather than been built upon it. The entrance is barely visible, an archway that someone long ago carved from local stone, now outlined and softened by moss until it looks like a natural cave mouth. Stepping through feels like entering the earth itself, and indeed, the interior has that same sense of being embraced by living rock and soil. The walls here are so thoroughly covered with various mosses and lichens that they seem to pulse gently with life, creating an atmosphere that's both protective and nurturing. What strikes you most about this space is how the rain has found its way inside not as an intrusion but as an invited guest. Several places in the roof allow water to enter in controlled streams, each one following a path that seems deliberately designed to enhance the beauty of the space. One stream cascades down a moss-covered wall, creating a living waterfall that pools in a natural basin before overflowing to water other areas of the interior garden that has established itself here. The floor beneath your feet is uneven but perfectly comfortable, covered with moss so thick it feels like walking on the finest natural carpet. Different areas have different textures. Some places featuring moss as fine as velvet, others where larger varieties create a landscape of tiny hills and valleys that add visual interest and provide microclimates for different plants to establish themselves. You find a place to sit where a natural shelf in the wall, cushioned with particularly thick moss, provides a perfect vantage point for observing the entire space. From here, you can see how water, light, and plant life have collaborated to create something far more beautiful than the original builders could have imagined. The gentle sound of water trickling down moss-covered surfaces provides a constant, soothing background that mingles perfectly with the rain still falling outside. The air here is particularly rich and thick, so laden with moisture and the sense of growing things that each breath feels nourishing. You can taste the rain, the earth, the green growing life that surrounds you. It's like breathing liquid peace, each inhalation slowing your heartbeat a little more, each exhalation releasing tensions you didn't even know you were carrying. As you sit in this underground garden, you become aware of the subtle sounds of life around you. The drip of water finding new paths through the moss, the almost inaudible rustle of plants growing and adjusting to the available light, the gentle echo of your own breathing in this natural cathedral. These sounds layer together to create a symphony so quiet and peaceful it seems designed to lull the listener into the deepest possible state of relaxation. Time takes on an even more fluid quality in this underground space. The light that filters through the roof opening shifts with the movement of mist outside, creating an ever-changing display that marks the passage of moments without any sense of urgency. You could be here for minutes or hours, it makes no difference. The space exists outside normal time, in a realm where patience and gradual change are the only meaningful measures of duration. Eventually, you emerge back into the gentle rain, feeling refreshed and somehow cleaner than when you entered. The moss-covered mound continues its ancient work behind you, transforming a little more each day, accommodating new growth, adapting to changing seasons, demonstrating the beautiful possibilities that emerge when human creation and natural processes learn to work together rather than in opposition. The path continues beyond this earth-integrated building, winding through what must once have been the village's agricultural area. Here, old field boundaries are still visible as low stone walls, but they've been so thoroughly claimed by moss and climbing plants that they look more like natural hedgerows than human constructions. The rain has created a network of small streams that follow these ancient boundaries, turning the old agricultural infrastructure into a natural irrigation system that waters the wild gardens that have claimed this space. Walking along one of these moss-cushioned walls, you discover remnants of what might have been an orchard. Ancient fruit trees, gnarled and weathered but still alive, emerge from the mist like sculptures carved from living wood. Their branches, heavy with moisture, create intricate patterns against the gray-white sky. Some still bear fruit, though it's clear that birds and other wildlife are the primary harvesters now. The trees have integrated themselves into the wild ecosystem, providing structure for climbing plants and shelter for the birds whose songs occasionally break through the gentle whisper of the rain. Beneath these ancient trees, the ground is particularly soft and rich, carpeted with moss and fallen leaves that have decomposed into a soil so fertile it seems to pulse with life. Small springs emerge here and there, fed by the rain that the tree's roots channel deep into the earth before it finds its way back to the surface. Each spring creates its own microenvironment, with specific plants that thrive in the constant moisture and filtered light beneath the canopy. You find a place to rest against one of the largest trees, its moss-covered trunk providing a comfortable backrest that seems to cradle your entire body. From this position, you can observe the intricate ecosystem that has developed in this former orchard. Everything is connected, the trees providing structure and shelter, the moss creating cushioned pathways for water and nutrients, the springs providing constant moisture, the rain replenishing everything in an endless cycle of renewal. The bark of the tree against your back feels alive, warm despite the moisture, textured in ways that speak of decades of patient growth. You can almost sense the slow circulation of nutrients rising from roots deep in the earth, the gradual expansion of wood and bark as the tree continues its ancient work of transforming sunlight and water into living structure. There's something deeply comforting about being in contact with something so old, so patient, so thoroughly integrated into the rhythms of the natural world. The rain on the leaves above creates one of the most complex and soothing soundscapes you've encountered. Each leaf seems to have its own relationship with the falling water, some allowing drops to roll off immediately, others holding them until they reach a certain weight before releasing them in perfectly timed secondary showers. The result is a constantly changing percussion that never becomes monotonous, always offering new rhythms and variations as the wind shifts branches and changes the angles at which rain meets leaf. Closing your eyes, you let yourself become completely immersed in this acoustic environment. The rain provides the constant background, but layered over it are dozens of other sounds. Water dripping from branch to moss-covered ground, the gentle gurgle of springs, the soft rustle of leaves moving in the moist air, the occasional call of a bird sheltering somewhere in the canopy above. Together, these sounds create a natural meditation that seems designed to slow thought and encourage the deepest possible relaxation. When you open your eyes, you notice that the mist has shifted again, revealing glimpses of other buildings scattered throughout this extended area of the village. Each one appears briefly before disappearing again into the white vapor, like a slideshow of peaceful images that change at the perfect pace for contemplation. Some buildings stand alone, completely integrated into wild gardens that have claimed the spaces around them. Others cluster in small groups, as if seeking companionship in their gradual transformation back to nature. One structure that emerges from the mist particularly captures your attention. It's larger than most of the others you've seen, and its position on a slight rise gives it a commanding view of the surrounding area. Even from a distance, you can see that this building has undergone one of the most complete transformations you've witnessed. Its walls so thoroughly covered with climbing plants and moss that it looks more like a living hill than a human construction. Rising from your comfortable position against the ancient tree, you make your way toward this moss-covered prominence. The path leads through what might once have been formal gardens, though now they've achieved a wild beauty that surpasses anything human planning could have created. Stone pathways are still visible, but they've been softened and beautified by moss until walking on them feels like treading on the finest carpet. Water features that were probably once fountains or decorative pools have been transformed into natural springs and streams that follow the contours of the land in ways that seem both inevitable and surprising. The building itself, when you reach it, proves even more magnificent than it appeared from a distance. It must have been a manor house or perhaps a community building of some importance, judging by its size and the quality of stonework still visible beneath the living covering that has claimed every surface. But rather than diminishing its grandeur, the moss and vines have enhanced it, creating a structure that seems to breathe with life and pulse with the gentle rhythms of growth and renewal. The entrance is particularly stunning. A double doorway framed by stone arches that have been embraced by climbing plants until they look like they were carved from living wood. Vines hang like curtains across the opening, creating a natural barrier that parts easily as you approach, but provides a sense of crossing a threshold into something sacred and separate from the ordinary world. Inside, you discover what might be the most beautiful space you've encountered in the entire village. The original room was obviously designed to impress. High ceilings, large windows, elaborate stonework that speaks of skilled craftsmen and considerable resources. But time and nature have transformed it into something far more impressive than its builders could have imagined. The walls rise around you in a symphony of different mosses and lichens, each species having claimed its preferred niche based on light, moisture, and proximity to the water sources that feed this living ecosystem. Some areas are covered in moss so fine it looks like green velvet. Others feature varieties that grow in intricate patterns resembling miniature forests or abstract art created by some patient, invisible artist working over decades of seasons. The floor here presents one of the most remarkable transformations you've seen. What was probably once polished stone or fine wood has been claimed by moss so thick and varied that it creates a landscape in miniature. Rolling hills and gentle valleys of different moss species create pathways that seem to guide your feet naturally from one area to another, while small streams of water, fed by rain entering through strategic gaps in the roof, wind between these green hills like rivers in a vast, soft landscape. Light enters this transformed space through windows that have been partially claimed by vines, creating a filtering effect that turns harsh sunlight into something gentle and green-tinged. The rain outside is visible through these living window treatments, but the sound is muffled and transformed into something even more soothing than the direct experience of precipitation. Each drop that hits the vines creates a tiny percussion note that adds to the complex symphony of water finding its way through the building's natural systems. What captures your attention most, though, is the way this space has become a showcase for water in all its forms. Rain enters through carefully preserved openings, follows channels carved by time and repetition through the moss-covered surfaces, pools and natural basins that have formed where the floor has settled, and eventually finds its way back outside through drainage systems that have evolved organically over the decades. The entire room has become a living demonstration of the water cycle, each stage visible and beautiful in its own way. You settle in the center of this remarkable space, on what might once have been a raised platform or dais, now transformed into a comfortable seating area by the thick moss that covers every surface. From this position, you can observe the entire room and appreciate how every element works together to create an environment of perfect peace and natural beauty. The acoustic properties of the moss-covered surfaces have transformed the room into a natural sound chamber where every whisper is softened and every echo is muffled into something soothing rather than sharp. The rain outside provides a constant, gentle rhythm, while the various water features inside add their voices to create a complex but never overwhelming symphony that seems specifically designed to quiet the mind and encourage deep relaxation. As you sit in this natural cathedral, you become aware of the subtle signs of life that surround you. Small movements in the moss suggest tiny creatures going about their business, completely unafraid of your presence. Occasionally, a bird finds its way inside, drinks from one of the natural pools, and flies out again through one of the vine-curtained windows. Everything exists in harmony, each element supporting the others in ways that speak of time and patience in the gradual achievement of perfect balance. The air here is particularly rich and nurturing, so thick with moisture and the sense of growing things that breathing feels more like drinking than respiration. Each breath brings with it the essence of rain, earth, moss, and the green life that has transformed this space into something far more beautiful than its original designers could have envisioned. The humidity is so complete that it feels like being embraced by the atmosphere itself, held and supported by air that has become substantial enough to provide comfort and protection. Time continues to move at its own pace in this transformed space. The light shifts gradually as clouds move overhead and mist swirls outside the vine-covered windows, creating an ever-changing display that marks the passage of moments without any sense of urgency or deadline. You could remain here indefinitely, simply observing the play of light and shadow, listening to the complex rhythms of water in all its forms, breathing the rich air that feeds both body and spirit. The walls around you seem to breathe with their covering of living moss, expanding and contracting slightly with changes in humidity and temperature. This creates the illusion that the building itself is alive, that you're sitting inside some vast, gentle organism that exists to provide shelter and peace to whatever finds its way here. The sensation is deeply comforting, like being held in the embrace of something infinitely patient and nurturing. Eventually, you notice that the rain outside has intensified slightly, creating a richer percussion on the vine-covered roof and walls. Rather than making the space feel closed in or isolated, this increase in rainfall seems to make it even more cozy and protective. The building's natural systems respond by channeling more water through the interior streams, creating slightly stronger flows that add new notes to the ongoing symphony of water finding its way through the transformed architecture. Standing to explore other areas of this remarkable building, you discover that what you've seen so far is only the beginning. Doorways lead to other rooms, each one unique in how it has been claimed and transformed by the patient work of water, time, and growing things. Some spaces have become indoor gardens where ferns and flowering plants have created environments that feel more like forest clearings than architectural interiors. Others have evolved into water features where streams and pools dominate, creating natural spas where the sound of flowing water provides constant, soothing meditation. One room has become a library of sorts, though instead of books, the walls are lined with different species of moss and lichen, each one a living text that tells the story of adaptation, patience, and the beautiful possibilities that emerge when natural processes are allowed to work without interference. The variety is incredible, some mosses growing in tight, velvety carpets, others creating loose, flowing patterns that move gently in the humid air currents that circulate through the space. Another room has transformed into what can only be described as a natural music hall. The combination of moss-covered surfaces, water features, and the specific proportions of the space has created acoustic properties that turn every sound into something musical. Your footsteps become gentle percussion, your breathing adds a wind instrument note, and the rain outside provides a constant, soothing rhythm section that makes simply existing in the space feel like participating in a vast, gentle concert. In what might once have been a kitchen, you discover one of the most practical demonstrations of how natural systems can take over human infrastructure and improve upon it. Water enters through roof openings and flows along channels that moss and time have carved through the surfaces, creating a natural plumbing system that's both beautiful and functional. Pools of clean water have formed where they're needed, drainage carries away excess, and the entire system operates with the quiet efficiency that only natural processes can achieve. Each room tells its own story of transformation, but all of them share the same themes: patience, adaptation, and the creation of beauty through the simple process of allowing water, time, and growing things to do their work without interference. The building has become a living textbook on the possibilities that emerge when human creation and natural processes learn to collaborate rather than compete. Returning to the main room, you find that the light has shifted again, creating new patterns on the moss-covered walls and revealing details that weren't apparent before. The rain outside continues its gentle work, and you realize that every moment spent in this place is unique. The light is never exactly the same. The sound of water is constantly evolving, and the living surfaces are always growing, always changing in subtle ways that keep the environment fresh and interesting without ever disturbing its essential peace. You settle once again in the center of the room, but this time you lie back on the moss-covered platform, letting it support your entire body with a softness and conformity that no manufactured mattress could match. Looking up at the ceiling, you see another masterpiece of natural transformation. What were probably once wooden beams are now completely wrapped in moss and trailing vines, creating a canopy that seems to filter not just light, but consciousness itself, encouraging the kind of deep relaxation that leads naturally into the most peaceful sleep. The position allows you to observe the room from an entirely new perspective. Details that weren't visible from a sitting position now reveal themselves. The way water traces specific paths across the ceiling as it follows the natural channels carved by repetition and time. How different mosses have claimed different areas based on their specific needs for light and moisture. The subtle ways that the entire space breathes and moves with changes in air pressure and humidity. The sound from this position is particularly enveloping. The rain above seems closer and more intimate, while the water features around the room create a three-dimensional audio environment that surrounds you completely. Every sound is softened by the moss that covers every surface, creating an acoustic cocoon that makes the outside world feel infinitely distant and the present moment infinitely precious. Your breathing slows naturally in response to the peaceful environment. Each inhalation brings with it the rich sense of moss, earth, and rain-washed air. Each exhalation releases tensions and worries that seemed important before but now feel as insubstantial as the mist that swirls outside the vine-covered windows. The rhythm of your breathing begins to synchronize with the gentle sounds around you. The rain, the dripping, the subtle movements of water through the building's natural systems. This is the perfect place to simply exist, to let time pass without marking its passage, to experience the deep peace that comes from being completely present in a moment of perfect natural beauty. The moss beneath you continues to provide support that seems custom designed for your body, while the air around you feeds not just your lungs, but your spirit with its rich mixture of moisture and life. The rain continues its ancient work, adding to the streams that flow through the building, feeding the mosses that create its living walls, maintaining the humidity that makes the air so nourishing to breathe. You're part of this cycle now, breathing the moisture that will eventually return to the atmosphere to fall again as rain, temporarily borrowing the peace that this place has spent decades accumulating and perfecting. As consciousness begins to soften around the edges, as the boundary between self and environment starts to blur in the most comfortable way, you realize that this is what true rest feels like. Not just the absence of activity, but the presence of perfect harmony between yourself and the world around you. The village has taught you something fundamental about peace. That it's not something you create or achieve, but something you allow, something you surrender to when the conditions are right and the environment supports it. The moss-covered building continues its patient work around you, breathing with the rhythm of growing things, flowing with the patterns of water finding its way, existing in perfect harmony with the rain that feeds it and the mist that embraces it. You're part of this now, another element in the complex, beautiful system that has evolved over decades of seasons, another note in the ongoing symphony of transformation and peace. The rain will continue when you're gone, the moss will keep growing, the streams will find new paths through the transformed architecture. But for now, in this perfect moment, you're part of it all. Breathing with the building, flowing with the water, growing with the moss, resting in the embrace of something infinitely patient and nurturing and designed for peace. The village holds you gently in its transformed spaces, asking nothing, offering everything, demonstrating through its quiet presence that beauty and peace are always possible when patience, water, and time are allowed to work their slow magic on the structures we create and the lives we lead. But even as you rest in perfect comfort, there's still more of this transformed world to discover. The rain continues its gentle invitation, and you realize that what you've experienced so far is only a portion of what this moss-covered sanctuary has to offer. The mist outside seems to beckon toward paths not yet taken, toward buildings whose stories of transformation have yet to be witnessed. Rising slowly from your moss-cushioned resting place, you feel refreshed rather than disturbed by the movement. The building's living systems continue their patient work around you as you make your way back through the rooms you've already explored, each one offering new details to notice, new aspects of beauty that reveal themselves only to the careful observer who takes time to truly see. Outside, the rain greets you like an old friend returning from a brief absence. The mist has shifted during your time inside, revealing new glimpses of the village's extended boundaries. What you initially thought was a compact community now reveals itself as something much larger, with buildings and structures scattered across a wider area than you first realized. Each glimpse through the moving fog shows new moss-covered shapes, new opportunities for discovery and peaceful contemplation. A path leads away from the grand transformed building, winding downhill through what appears to be a terraced garden area that has gone magnificently wild. Stone retaining walls are still visible, but they've been so thoroughly claimed by moss and trailing plants that they look more like natural geological formations than human constructions. The terraces themselves have become a series of hanging gardens where different microclimates have allowed various plant communities to establish themselves. Walking down through these living terraces, you discover that each level has its own character and personality. Some are dominated by ferns that have grown to incredible size in the constant moisture, their fronds creating canopies that filter the rain into the gentlest possible shower. Others feature moss gardens of such variety and beauty that they resemble living tapestries, with different species creating patterns and textures that change subtly as you move past them. Water plays a starring role in this terraced landscape. Rain collects on each level and overflows to the next, creating a series of small waterfalls that add their voices to the ongoing symphony of this place. Some overflows are dramatic enough to create actual cascades that you can hear from a distance, while others are so gentle they're barely visible, just a slight darkening of the moss where water traces its patient path downward. One terrace particularly captures your attention because of the way it has become a showcase for water in motion. Here, the original stonework has settled and shifted in such a way that rainwater creates a complex network of streams, pools, and tiny waterfalls that turn the entire level into a natural water garden. The sound is mesmerizing, dozens of different water voices combining to create a peaceful chorus that seems designed specifically to slow thought and encourage contemplation. You find a place to sit on the moss-covered edge of this terrace, your feet just touching the water that flows gently past. The sensation is wonderfully cooling and grounding, connecting you physically to the hydrological systems that keep this entire ecosystem thriving. The water is perfectly clear, and you can see how it has carved channels through the moss over years of patient flow, creating miniature canyons and valleys in the living carpet that covers everything. From this position, you can observe the intricate relationships between water, stone, and plant life that make this terraced garden possible. Rain falls on moss, which absorbs what it needs and allows the rest to flow onward. Stone provides structure and support while also creating the variations in elevation that guide water's movement. Plants establish themselves where conditions are right, then modify those conditions to support even more diverse growth. Everything works together in a system so complex and beautiful it seems almost too perfect to be real. The mist continues to move and shift around the terraces, sometimes revealing the full scope of this transformed landscape, other times creating intimate pockets of visibility that make you feel like you're discovering secret gardens hidden within the larger whole. Both perspectives are equally beautiful. The grand view that shows how all the elements work together, and the intimate glimpses that allow you to appreciate individual details and relationships. As you sit with your feet in the flowing water, you become aware of how the rain has changed your own relationship with moisture. Your clothes are thoroughly dampened, but not uncomfortably wet, and your skin has absorbed enough humidity to feel soft and supple in a way that speaks of perfect hydration. Even your hair feels different. Softer, more alive, as if the constant moisture has awakened every strand to its full potential for beauty and health. The air you're breathing has become substantial enough to be almost nourishing in itself. Each inhalation brings not just oxygen, but moisture, minerals, and the complex chemistry of growing things. It's like breathing liquid life, each breath contributing to a sense of vitality and well-being that grows stronger the longer you remain in this transformed environment. Rising from your seat by the flowing water, you continue down through the terraced gardens, discovering new wonders at every level. Here, a terrace has become home to what might be the largest concentration of flowering plants you've seen in the village. Delicate blooms in shades of white, pale yellow, and soft lavender emerge from the moss like stars scattered across a green sky. The rain beads on their petals without weighing them down, creating tiny prisms that catch and scatter what light filters through the mist. There, another level has become a showcase for the incredible variety of moss species that thrive in this climate. What looked like uniform green covering from a distance reveals itself to be a complex community of different plants, each with its own texture, color, and growth pattern. Some grow in tight, velvety carpets that beg to be touched. Others create loose, flowing patterns that move gently in the humid air currents. Still others grow in vertical formations that resemble miniature forests, complete with their own understory and canopy layers. At the bottom of the terraced area, you discover that all the water flowing down from the levels above has created a substantial stream that winds away through what appears to be a forested area. Following this stream becomes your next adventure, as the path alongside it leads deeper into the transformed landscape surrounding the village proper. The forest that embraces this stream is unlike anything you've experienced before. These trees are ancient, their trunks massive and deeply furrowed with bark that speaks of centuries of patient growth. But what makes them truly spectacular is how they've been embraced by the same forces of gentle transformation that have claimed the village buildings. Every surface is covered with moss, lichen, and climbing plants that have turned each tree into a living sculpture. The canopy overhead is so thick and varied that it creates a natural roof that transforms the rain into something even gentler than what you've been experiencing. Here, precipitation becomes a fine mist that drifts down like benediction, so soft and gentle it feels more like breathing humid air than being rained upon. The sound is different too. Instead of the discrete patter of individual drops, there's a whispered susurrus that seems to emanate from the entire forest at once. Walking along the moss-cushioned path beside the stream, you discover that this forest has its own collection of transformed structures. Buildings here are so thoroughly integrated with the trees that they seem to grow from the forest floor like natural formations. Some appear to be built around living trees, with trunks emerging through roofs and walls in ways that suggest the structures were designed to accommodate the forest rather than displace it. One building draws your attention because of how perfectly it demonstrates this integration between human creation and natural growth. The structure appears to be built in a clearing, but as you approach, you realize that the clearing exists because the building provides a space for it, not the other way around. Massive trees form the corners and support points of the structure, their trunks incorporated into the walls so seamlessly that it's impossible to tell where wood ends and stone begins. The roof of this forest building is perhaps the most remarkable feature. Instead of keeping the weather out, it seems designed to let it in controlled ways. Gaps between different materials create openings that allow rain to enter in predetermined patterns, watering interior gardens that have established themselves throughout the space. The result is a building that breathes with the forest around it, participating in the same cycles of moisture and growth that sustain the entire ecosystem. Inside, you discover what can only be described as an indoor forest. Trees grow through the floor and emerge through the roof, their canopies creating multiple levels of shelter and habitat within the single structure. Streams flow through channels that seem as natural as if they had carved themselves, connecting pools that reflect the filtered light coming down through layers of leaves and moss-covered surfaces. The acoustic environment here is particularly magical. The combination of water sounds, the gentle whisper of rain on leaves, and the subtle creaking and settling of living wood creates a symphony that seems composed by the forest itself. Every sound is softened and muffled by the moss and plant life that covers every surface, creating an audio environment that encourages the deepest possible relaxation. You find a place to rest where a massive root, covered in moss so thick it forms a natural chair, provides a comfortable seat that seems designed specifically for observing this indoor forest. From here, you can watch how light moves through the layered canopy above, creating an ever-changing display as rain-laden mist shifts and swirls outside the building's permeable walls. The air in this forest building is the richest you've encountered yet. So thick with moisture and the exhalations of growing things that breathing feels more like drinking than respiration. Each breath brings with it the complex chemistry of photosynthesis, decomposition, and growth, the fundamental processes that sustain all life concentrated into something you can actually taste and feel as it nourishes every cell in your body. Time moves even more slowly here, if that's possible. The gentle processes of forest growth and change operate on scales that make human urgency seem absurd. Sitting among these ancient trees, listening to the soft conversation between rain and leaves, you begin to understand what true patience looks like. Not the forced waiting that characterizes so much of human experience, but the confident, unhurried certainty that everything unfolds in its proper time and season. The stream that led you to this forest building continues its journey deeper into the woods, and eventually you follow it, drawn by the promise of further discoveries. The path alongside the water is soft with accumulated moss and fallen leaves, creating a walking surface so comfortable it feels like the earth itself is supporting and encouraging your exploration. Deeper in the forest, you encounter more buildings, each one unique in how it has negotiated the relationship between human design and natural process. Some structures have been so thoroughly claimed by climbing plants that they look like green hills with mysteriously regular shapes. Others have achieved a perfect symbiosis with the trees around them, becoming part of the forest ecosystem while still maintaining their essential architectural character. One clearing opens around what must once have been a significant building, though now it exists in a state of such perfect integration with its environment that categorizing it as either natural or artificial seems meaningless. The structure has multiple levels that follow the natural contours of the land, with some areas built into hillsides and others supported by living trees. Water flows through and around the building in ways that seem both completely natural and obviously designed, creating an environment where the boundaries between inside and outside, natural and constructed, have been dissolved entirely. The rain here has found dozens of ways to interact with the building's surfaces and spaces. Some areas are completely sheltered, creating dry spaces where different kinds of plant communities have established themselves. Others are partially exposed, allowing rain to enter in controlled amounts that water specific gardens or fill particular pools. Still others are completely open to the sky, creating courtyards and terraces where rain and sun can work together to support the most diverse possible plant life. Exploring this multi-level forest building becomes an adventure in itself. Each room and corridor offers new perspectives on how human ingenuity and natural process can collaborate to create something far more beautiful than either could achieve alone. Stairs carved from living rock and cushioned with moss connect levels that seem to grow from the forest floor like natural terraces. Bridges spanning streams and small ravines are so thoroughly integrated with the vegetation that they seem like natural formations until you notice the subtle signs of human craftsmanship that guided their creation. In what might once have been a great hall, you discover a space that takes your breath away. The room is enormous, its ceiling supported by living trees whose trunks rise through the floor and continue growing upward until they emerge through carefully planned openings in the roof. Between these natural pillars, the space flows like a forest clearing, with different areas devoted to different aspects of the indoor ecosystem that has established itself here. Water plays a starring role in this great hall, entering through multiple openings in the roof and flowing along channels that connect a series of pools and water features throughout the space. Some channels are carved in stone, others follow natural depressions in the moss-covered floor, and still others flow along the roots of the great trees that support the ceiling. The result is a complex water system that serves both practical and aesthetic purposes, providing irrigation for the plants while creating a sound environment that's impossibly soothing. The acoustic properties of this hall are extraordinary. The combination of water sounds, the whisper of rain on leaves, and the natural reverb created by the high ceiling and soft surfaces makes every sound musical. Your footsteps become percussion, your breathing adds a wind instrument note, and the various water features provide a complex rhythm section that turns simply existing in the space into a form of participation in a vast, gentle orchestra. You settle in the center of this remarkable hall on a natural platform formed where several large roots converge and moss has grown thick enough to create a comfortable seating area. From this position, you can observe the entire space and appreciate how every element contributes to a unified vision of perfect harmony between human creation and natural process. The light in this hall changes constantly as clouds and mist move outside, but it's always soft and green-tinged, filtered through multiple layers of leaves and moss-covered surfaces until it becomes something that feeds the spirit as much as it illuminates the space. Even when the rain intensifies outside, creating stronger streams flowing through the hall's various channels, the overall effect is always peaceful, always supportive of contemplation and rest. As you sit in this natural cathedral, you become aware of the subtle signs of life that surround you. Small creatures move through the moss and among the plants, going about their business with complete acceptance of your presence. Birds occasionally fly through the space, using it as part of their larger territory, drinking from the pools and streams before continuing on their way. Everything coexists peacefully, each element supporting the others in ways that speak of deep integration and mutual benefit. The air in this great hall is perhaps the most nourishing you've breathed anywhere in the village. So rich with moisture and the complex chemistry of forest life that each breath feels like a meal in itself. The oxygen here seems more potent, the humidity more nurturing, the very atmosphere more alive than anything you've experienced in the constructed world you came from. Your clothes have long since absorbed as much moisture as they can hold, but rather than feeling uncomfortably wet, you feel perfectly adapted to this aquatic environment. Your skin has become soft and supple, your hair moves with a fluid grace that speaks of perfect hydration, and even your movements seem to flow more naturally in the thick, humid air that surrounds everything here. The stream that brought you to this forest complex continues its journey beyond the Great Hall, and eventually you follow it again, drawn by curiosity about what other wonders this transformed landscape might hold. The path leads through areas where the forest becomes even denser, where the canopy overhead blocks out so much light that the understory takes on an almost mystical quality. Here, in this deep forest environment, you encounter some of the most dramatic examples of how completely nature can reclaim human constructions when given enough time and the right conditions. Buildings emerge from the green twilight like ancient ruins, so thoroughly covered with moss and vines that they seem more like natural formations than architectural remnants. Some are barely recognizable as human constructions, their original purpose is lost in the beautiful obscurity of decades of patient growth. One structure catches your attention because of the way light behaves around it. Despite being almost completely covered with vegetation, it seems to glow from within, as if some internal source of illumination is finding its way through the layers of moss and leaves that cover its surfaces. As you approach, you discover that this effect is created by a sophisticated system of openings and reflective surfaces that channel and amplify what little light penetrates the forest canopy. Inside, you find yourself in a space that can only be described as a natural cathedral of light. Despite the thick forest canopy outside, the interior is filled with a soft, even illumination that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. The walls are covered with moss and lichen that actually seem to phosphoresce in the dim light, creating an environment that feels magical and otherworldly. The source of this mysterious lighting becomes apparent as you explore the space more thoroughly. Water flowing through carefully designed channels hits specific surfaces at precise angles, creating reflections that bounce light through the building's interior in ways that amplify and distribute what little illumination is available. The system is so sophisticated and so beautifully integrated with the natural processes that have claimed the building that it seems like the work of some brilliant engineer who understood both optics and ecology. The effect is mesmerizing. Light moves through the space like a living thing, shifting and flowing as the water that creates it responds to changes in the rain outside. Sometimes the illumination is stronger, when heavy rain creates more dramatic flows. Other times it becomes gentler and more diffuse, when lighter precipitation creates subtler water movements. But it's always beautiful, always perfectly adapted to the mood and rhythm of the moment. You find a place to rest in this cathedral of light, on a moss-covered stone that provides a perfect vantage point for observing how the entire system works together. From here, you can see how water, light, and plant life collaborate to create an environment that transcends anything that pure architecture or pure nature could achieve independently. The sound in this space is as remarkable as the lighting. Water flowing through the various channels creates a complex percussion that's enhanced and modified by the acoustic properties of the moss-covered surfaces. The result is music, actual music that seems composed by some invisible artist who understood both harmony and the physics of sound reflection in enclosed spaces. As you rest in this luminous sanctuary, you realize that you've been on a journey through increasingly refined examples of how human creation and natural process can work together. Each building and space you've encountered has taught you something about the possibilities that emerge when patience, water, and time are allowed to work their slow magic on the structures we create. The rain continues its gentle work outside, feeding the systems that make all of this beauty possible. Inside this cathedral of light and sound, you feel more peaceful than you ever have before. The air is so rich and nourishing that breathing feels like a form of communion with the life force itself. The light creates patterns on the moss-covered walls that seem to pulse with the rhythm of growing things. The water music provides a soundtrack that seems designed specifically to quiet the mind and open the heart to the deepest possible peace. Your body has adapted completely to this environment. Your clothes, your skin, your hair, everything has absorbed moisture until you feel more like a part of the forest ecosystem than a visitor from the outside world. Your breathing has synchronized with the gentle rhythms around you, and your heartbeat seems to have slowed to match the patient pulse of growing things. In this perfect environment, consciousness begins to soften around the edges. The boundary between self and surroundings becomes less distinct, less important. You're breathing the same air as the moss on the walls, sharing the same water that flows through the building's living systems, participating in the same cycles of renewal and growth that sustain the entire forest community. The light continues to flow through the space like liquid peace. The water continues to create its patient music, and the moss-covered walls continue to breathe with the rhythm of life itself. You're part of this now, another element in the complex, beautiful system that has evolved over decades of seasons, another note in the ongoing symphony of transformation and harmony. Time loses all meaning in this luminous sanctuary. Minutes, hours, days. These human constructs seem irrelevant in the face of the patient, eternal rhythms that govern this place. You could remain here forever, simply being present in this perfect moment of peace and beauty, breathing the rich air that feeds both body and spirit, listening to the water music that seems composed specifically to guide consciousness toward the deepest possible rest. The village has become your teacher, showing you through its transformed spaces that peace is not something you achieve, but something you allow. Not something you create, but something you surrender to when the conditions are right and the environment supports it. In the gentle sound of rain on moss, in the soft light that flows like water through moss-covered walls, in the rich air that nurtures every breath, you find not just rest, but a new understanding of what rest can be when it's supported by an environment that has spent decades perfecting the art of peace. The rain will continue when you're gone. The light will keep flowing through its carefully designed channels. The moss will continue growing and breathing and creating beauty with the infinite patience of living things. But for now, in this perfect moment suspended outside ordinary time, you're part of it all, breathing with the building, flowing with the light, growing with the moss, resting in the embrace of something infinitely patient and nurturing and wise. In this cathedral of light and sound and living walls, you discover what true sanctuary feels like. Not just shelter from the storm, but integration with it. Not just protection from the elements, but harmony with them. Not just a place to rest, but a place to remember what rest really means when it's supported by an environment that has spent decades learning how to hold and nurture and heal whatever finds its way here. The moss-covered village in the mist has taught you its deepest lesson. That beauty and peace are always possible when patience, water, and time are allowed to work their slow magic on the structures we create and the lives we lead. In the gentle transformation of stone into living walls, of buildings into sanctuaries, of villages into ecosystems, you see a model for how everything can be transformed when approached with enough patience and love and respect for the natural processes that sustain all life. And in the perfect peace that embraces you in this luminous space, in the rich air that feeds your spirit with every breath, in the water music that guides your consciousness toward the deepest possible rest, you find yourself transformed as well. Not into something different, but into a truer version of what you've always been beneath the constructed urgencies of the outside world. Here, in the gentle embrace of moss and mist and falling rain, you remember what it feels like to be truly at peace.